This video is a full revision walkthrough of An Inspector Calls. This video specifically refers to the infographic designed and created by MindClub. You can get a digital copy of the infographic, together with digital copies of each of the character profiles and the play's historical context using the links in the description below. Welcome to this visual learner revision infographic for J.B. Priestley's An Inspector Calls. This digital poster has been designed to help you visualize the entire play on a single page, enabling you to have a solid foundation from which to revise and build your understanding of the play. Every part of the infographic has meaning and relevance. Each component of the infographic also has a description. Reading through these descriptions is a great way to quickly build up your knowledge. We'll also cover each of these in this full walkthrough. Let's start with some character introductions. We'll begin with Eva Smith, or Daisy Renton, as she's also known as. Though she never appears on stage, Eva Smith is the tragic figure at the heart of the play. She represents the working class and the consequences of society's lack of compassion. Each of the Burlings and Gerald contributed to her suffering, leading to her eventual suicide. Let's meet the Burlings. At the head of the family, we have Arthur Burling, a wealthy businessman. He is ambitious, self-important, and firmly capitalist, believing in individualism and hard work. He is eager for a knighthood and sees his daughter's engagement as a chance to improve his social standing. Arthur is married to Sybil Burling. His wife is a prominent member of a charity organization. She is cold and socially superior, firmly upholding traditional class values. She refuses to accept responsibility for her actions and is quick to pass blame onto others. Sybil and Arthur's daughter is Sheila Burling, initially portrayed as spoiled and self-absorbed. However, she undergoes significant character development, feeling deep remorse for her part in Eva's suffering and ultimately rejecting her parents' lack of accountability. The Burlings also have a son, Eric Burling. He is portrayed as weak and irresponsible. He struggles with drinking problems and eventually admits to having a relationship with Eva, resulting in a pregnancy. His journey highlights issues of guilt, privilege, and the consequences of reckless behavior. Sheila's fiancé is Gerald Croft. Gerald is the son of a wealthy industrialist. While he initially appears charming and respectable, it will later be revealed that he had an affair with Eva Daisy. Though he shows some remorse for this, he ultimately aligns himself with the older Burlings, dismissing the inspector's warnings. Then, of course, we have Inspector Goole, a mysterious and authoritative figure who arrives unexpectedly at the Burling household. His name suggests a ghostly presence, and he acts as the moral compass of the play. He systematically exposes each character's role in Eva Smith's downfall, delivering a powerful message about social responsibility. Let's also not forget Edna, who is the household maid to the Burlings. Although she plays only a small part in the play, she is a reminder of the working class divide that exists between them. She is an observer to the middle-class lifestyle, their views and opinions. Now that we've met the cast, let's take a quick look at the stage, which has been set to assist your learning. There are flowers decorating the stage. These are daisies, a reference to the fact that it is revealed later that Eva was also known by the name Daisy Renton. We can also see a decorative clock. This is a reference to the importance of time in the play. J.B. Priestley wrote the play in 1945, but it is actually set in 1912, just before the sinking of the Titanic, which happens later that year, and just a few years before the breakout of World War I. Both of these events are referred to in the play. They stand as notable uses of dramatic irony. A small detail that can act as a learning aid is to notice that the hands on the clock are set to 9 and 12. The play is set in 1912. Moving across, we can then see an image of a single empty chair. The actual scene of the play is that of a dinner setting. However, the single chair here represents how the inspector will question each of the cast individually in turn. Next to the chair is the telephone. This actually features in Priestley's original stage notes for the play, suggesting in Act 2 a small table with a telephone on it. The telephone is used by Mr. Burling to call his contacts, revealing that Mr. Gould is not known to them. It also ominously rings in the final scene. Another detail from Priestley's stage notes is the color of the stage lights. He states the lighting should be pink and intimate, creating a warm and comfortable atmosphere for the Burling family. Priestley instructs that the lighting should become brighter and harder upon the inspector's arrival, signifying the exposure of uncomfortable truths. Finally, the painted backdrop of the stage is there to represent the Burling home, which Priestley describes as a fairly large suburban house belonging to a prosperous manufacturer. This setting reflects the family's comfortable upper-middle-class lifestyle, which will soon be shaken by the events of the play. With these elements in place, the stage is set for an inspector calls to unfold, a drama that will challenge notions of responsibility, privilege, and morality. Our story begins in the luxurious dining room of the Burling family home. Next to Mr. Burling is a champagne bottle. This is used to symbolize the engagement between Sheila Burling and Gerald Croft. Their union is a cause for celebration, particularly for Mr. Burling, who sees it as a prosperous business move that will strengthen ties between the two families. The scene is one of wealth and prosperity, reflecting the capitalist ideals of Arthur Burling, a self-made businessman. His success is symbolized by the image of a factory, which represents the industry that has made him rich, and more specifically, the garment trade, represented here by the textile patches. The ladder is a visual metaphor for Burling's social climb, rising from humble beginnings to a position of wealth and influence. Mr. Burling is the epitome of capitalist ambition, believing in individualism and hard work as shown by his briefcase. He gives a speech about the bright future ahead, confident that there will be no chance of war and that the Titanic is unsinkable. His self-assurance is unshaken, and he views Sheila's marriage as a business opportunity rather than a romantic union. His desire for status is represented by the knight chess piece. This is a reference to his anticipated knighthood, which he sees as the ultimate validation of his success. Edna, the household maid, is shown here and represents the point at which the inspector is introduced. The doorbell rings, a moment of great dramatic tension. The inspector enters, interrupting Mr. Burling's speech on self-reliance and foreshadowing the dismantling of his philosophy. Inspector Gould is calm yet authoritative, carrying an air of mystery. He brings shocking news. A young woman, Eva Smith, has died in an apparent suicide. The inspector's method is to question each person in turn, methodically revealing their part in Eva's suffering. The first revelation is that 2 years before the play's events, Eva Smith worked at Burling and Company, Mr. Burling's factory. Eva, along with other workers, led a strike demanding higher wages, arguing that their current pay was too low to survive on. The strike is symbolized by the placard. The conflict between worker rights and employer interests is captured by the scales, which tilt in favor of business owners like Burling. Mr. Burling saw this as a challenge to his authority and dismissed Eva, making an example of her to discourage others from demanding better conditions. This sets in motion a chain of events that led to her tragic downfall. Here are some quotes from Mr. Burling which represent his justification and attitude. "I was paying Eva Smith a good salary. Mr. Burling insists he treated Eva fairly, refusing to acknowledge that she was struggling financially. She'd had a lot to say, far too much. He disapproves of workers who stand up for their rights, seeing them as troublemakers. A man has to make his own way. His belief in individual success blinds him to the struggles of the working class." And here are some additional quotes which highlight his lack of responsibility for Eva's death. "I refuse to take any responsibility." Despite being the first link in Eva's downfall, Mr. Burling refuses to accept any blame. "I think we're all agreed that the girl had to go. He believes firing her was justified, showing no remorse. Mr. Burling represents the arrogance and selfishness of the upper classes. His actions illustrate the dangers of unchecked capitalism and a lack of social responsibility. Priestley uses him to critique those in power who exploit workers without considering their well-being. Sheila's involvement is next. The imagery surrounding her includes a ring box, representing her engagement to Gerald. It also represents the themes of love, aspiration, and societal expectations. There is also a ring on a thread, which is used to symbolize the fragility of the relationship between them, suggesting their future together is uncertain. The ties holding the thread in place symbolize the ease at which trust and love can be undone with betrayal and dishonesty. Sheila is initially portrayed as vain and entitled. Her personality is symbolized by the hand mirror, reflecting her self-absorbed nature. After being dismissed from Burling and Company, Ava found work at Millward's, a prestigious department store. Sheila visited the store to try on a dress but became jealous when she saw Eva smiling. She assumed Eva was mocking her. The image of the hat and downward gaze is used to symbolize this moment of insecurity and anger from the upper class. Sheila used her social influence to have Eva fired, threatening to withdraw her family's business from the store if they did not comply. The dress represents Eva's achievement of working in fashion and aspirations for a better life, shattered by Sheila's impulsive cruelty. Sheila is the second character revealed to have mistreated Eva Smith. Unlike her father, she later shows remorse for her actions, highlighting her potential for change. These quotes demonstrate her willingness to explain her actions. "It was my own fault." Sheila quickly realizes she was in the wrong and admits responsibility. "I was in a furious temper." She acknowledges that her actions were driven by childish jealousy, rather than any real wrongdoing on Eva's part. She was very pretty and looked as if she could take care of herself. Her initial reaction shows how she saw Eva as a threat rather than as a person in need. Her character demonstrates growth and acceptance of responsibility, which can be seen in this next quote: "I know I'm to blame, and I'm desperately sorry." Unlike her parents, Sheila shows genuine remorse and wants to change. Sheila represents the younger generation, who have the potential to acknowledge mistakes and embrace social responsibility. Her story highlights themes of jealousy, privilege, and personal growth. Priestley contrasts her with her parents to show hope for change in society. While Sheila played a crucial role in Eva's downfall, her willingness to change makes her one of the most sympathetic characters in the play. Meanwhile, the inspector reveals that Eva later took the name Daisy Renton, her innocence and fragility captured in the imagery of a daisy flower. Gerald's reaction to this name signals that he knows more than he has admitted, setting up the revelations to come in Act 2. Gerald's wealth and freedom are represented here by a motor car and a grand staircase. The staircase also acts a metaphor for him marrying down. In Act 2, the focus shifts to Gerald, and he is forced to reveal his involvement with Eva Daisy. Sheila, beginning to accept responsibility for her actions, argues with Gerald about his deception. Mrs. Burling, however, remains dismissive and challenges the inspector's manners, believing his questioning to be inappropriate. Gerald explains that he met Eva Daisy the previous summer at the Palace Bar, a place where men of his class often sought companionship from vulnerable women. She was being harassed by Alderman Megati, a local politician with a reputation for inappropriate behavior. He rescued her and took her to a hotel, portraying himself as a hero. Gerald took pity on her and puts her up in some lodgings. Soon after, they started an affair, symbolized by the couple embracing as a moment of genuine care. Eventually, Gerald ended their relationship, leaving Eva Daisy heartbroken, as represented by the broken heart. He gave her money to live on, but this was not enough to prevent her descent into poverty. His internal conflict is represented by the compass, symbolizing the moral dilemma he faced. The rose signifies the genuine affection he had for Eva, though ultimately he abandoned her when it was no longer convenient. Quotes from Gerald about the affair reveal the complexity of Gerald's role in Eva's downfall. "She looked young and fresh and charming. He was attracted to her innocence and vulnerability, reinforcing the power imbalance in their relationship. I didn't feel about her as she felt about me. Eva genuinely cared for Gerald, while he only saw the relationship as temporary. I insisted on a parting gift of money. He gave her some financial help when he ended things, but this was more to ease his guilt than to ensure her security. Gerald ended the relationship because he knew it had no future, as he would not marry someone of Eva's social class. Eva then has to leave the accommodation Gerald provided, once again being left alone and vulnerable. Other quotes from Gerald include, "I don't come into this suicide business." At first, he tries to distance himself from Eva's fate, refusing to accept his part in her downfall. But then he shows some guilt, but never fully accepts responsibility, saying, "I'm rather more upset by this business than I probably appear to be." Gerald played a key role in Eva's life, offering temporary kindness but ultimately abandoning her when she needed him most. His failure to take responsibility reinforces Priestley's critique of the upper class. The inspector moves his questioning to Mrs. Burling, whose comfortable and detached upper-class lifestyle is represented by the tiered cake stand. Eva, now desperate, turns to Mrs. Burling's charitable organization for help. However, Mrs. Burling refuses her, as reflected in the empty box, symbolizing the superficiality of her so-called charity. When Eva, in despair, gives her name as Mrs. Burling, it offends Sybil, who cruelly denies her any assistance. The charity box highlights the hypocrisy of Mrs. Burling's moral superiority. Eva is left on her knees, utterly destitute. When pressed by Sheila and the inspector, Sybil admits that Eva had claimed to be pregnant. The inspector confirms this, explaining that Eva was alone, penniless, and expecting a child. Mrs. Burling's coldness is revealed in her quotes. "She only had herself to blame." Sybil dismisses Eva's suffering, showing no sympathy for her desperate situation. "I did nothing I'm ashamed of." She refuses to accept any responsibility, believing she acted correctly in rejecting Eva's request for help. The consequence of this is that Eva was left with no support, which may have pushed her towards suicide. Sybil's refusal to help was based on class prejudice. She believed Eva, as a working-class woman, was morally inferior and deceitful. Her actions are particularly cruel because her charity was supposed to help women in distress. Yet she used her influence to ensure Eva received nothing. Mrs. Burling insists that the blame lies solely with the unknown father of Ava's unborn child. She condemns him as a drunken young idler who must be forced to take responsibility. But her confidence shatters when she realizes that the father is her own son, Eric. Eric, now under intense scrutiny, confesses his role in Eva's downfall. His increasing dependence on alcohol is symbolized by wine pouring from above, showing the influence of family pressures. The wine falls onto the Palace Bar, the location where he first meets Eva, and in his drunken state, he forced himself upon her, symbolized by the grip on a garment. The corset represents the tragic intimacy of their encounter, an act that left Eva pregnant and abandoned. Realizing the gravity of the situation, Eric stole money from his father's safe to support Eva, believing he was doing the right thing. However, his guilt-ridden actions were not enough to help her. The footsteps leading away from the safe symbolize his growing disillusionment with his family, culminating in his bitter remark to Mr. Burling. "You're not the kind of father a chap could go to when he's in trouble." Mrs. Burling, unaware that Eva's child was her own grandchild, denied her help and told her to find the father. There is a connection between the corset and Eva's plea to Mrs. Burling. Unaware that Eva's child was her own grandchild, she denied her help and told her to find the father. This rejection was the final blow that led Eva to take her own life. Quotes from Eric reveal the tragedy of the relationship. "I wasn't in love with her or anything, but I liked her. She was pretty and a good sport." This shows Eric's immaturity and lack of real emotional attachment. "You killed them both. Damn you, damn you." Eric lashes out at his mother, blaming her for refusing to help Eva and their unborn child. The fact remains that I did what I did. Unlike his parents, Eric accepts responsibility, showing remorse and growth. Eric's actions serve to highlight male privilege and exploitation and to show how working-class women were vulnerable to abuse from wealthier men. Eric's remorse also exposes generational conflict. Eric and Sheila learn from their mistakes, unlike their parents. This strengthens Priestley's message of responsibility. The younger generation represents hope for change, while the older generation refuses to learn. By the end, Eric is deeply shaken and, like Sheila, accepts blame. But it is too late to undo the damage. Inspector Gould delivers his final haunting speech, warning that society must learn from its mistakes or suffer the consequences. He speaks of fire, symbolizing both destruction and the potential for renewal. His presence takes on a supernatural quality, emphasized by the ghostly shadow, suggesting he is more than just a man. He is a manifestation of collective guilt and conscience. Quotes from the inspector are underpinned with meaning and warning. Each of you helped to kill her. Remember that. Never forget it. This forces them to confront their collective guilt. We are responsible for each other. Priestley's socialist message rejecting Berling's capitalist views. There are millions and millions and millions of Ava Smiths and John Smiths still left with us. This suggests that Eva's case is not unique. Society must change to prevent further suffering. If men will not learn that lesson, then they will be taught it in fire and blood and anguish. A warning about the consequences of ignoring social responsibility, likely referencing the world wars. In the closing scene, the Berlings begin to argue about whether the inspector is real. Mr. Berling calls the chief constable and learns that there is no Inspector Gould on the force. Gerald calls the infirmary and is told that no girl has died that night. Convinced they have been tricked, Mr. and Mrs. Berling and Gerald celebrate, relieved that their reputations remain intact. However, Sheila and Eric are deeply affected and insist that the moral lesson remains, whether the inspector is real or not. At that moment, the telephone rings, a symbol of reckoning. Mr. Berling answers and is told that a young girl has just died and a real inspector is on his way. The cycle continues, leaving the audience with the question, will they truly change? Or will history repeat itself?